Hey everyone, this is smpratte, and it's that time again where Pokemon decides to do another reprint. Yes, Hidden Fates is getting another release. What are we on, like the third or fourth wave at this point? And what it's going to be is mostly tins, if not only tins, but the difference with this one, it looks a little bit more widespread. I've not only heard about the US, but the UK as well is getting a restock. Singapore, I think, was another country. This one looks a little bit more expansive. We're not sure on the quantity yet. Nobody can know until, a few months from now, but nonetheless, it has been confirmed that Hidden Fates will have another reprint. It will be available yet again. And if you remember my first video on Hidden Fates and one of the earliest videos on Modern Product, probably going back to the early days of this channel, the number one thing I always stress about Modern is the risk of a reprint, the risk of a restock. We had with Roaring Skies, Ancient Origins, you had that huge unprecedented situation where they did like a retroactive reprint or restock. This one is more in line with this product is still available. It's something that is consistently being purchased. Evolutions is one where it's really been there for a long time, but that is the name of the game for Modern. That's the risk you take. And now I do think Modern does have a lot of opportunity today. That might be its own separate video talking about EVs, pull rates, and things like that. Especially in the face of like the rising prices for vintage. Like vintage is so explosive right now. Naturally, the cost of capital is going to gravitate towards something, with a lower cost of risk, which is Modern. But remember, the inherent element for Modern, the inherent landscape of Modern is it can be reprinted, as we're experiencing right now with Hidden Fates. So with that said, now we're going to talk about why none of that matters. We're really going to dig deep to the analysis of not only Hidden Fates, but Modern at large, and just sets at large, and collectibles at large, and what really drives them, because people, when they hear reprint or they hear restock or more availability, really need to break that down. Because if we start with something like Roaring Skies, when you had that crazy reprint, and that was like a massive amount of product, I could just stock up on pretty much however much I wanted from my distributor. But the key thing to remember Roaring Skies is entirely player-based. It's entirely player-focused, where something like Hidden Fates is a different dynamic. It's a popular set because it's collectible. Sure, there might be player cards in there and player elements, but it's mainly geared towards collectability. So therefore, it's going to have a different identity. So when you look at something like Hidden Fates, I think it's better to take a step back and understand, what's the driving force behind collectibles. And in my opinion, I think it's a mixture of two big variables, which is going to be demand, popularity, and then rarity. And with something like set cards, it's primarily driven by popularity. When you look at the pop report, what that's telling you at the end of the day is the population of cards submitted. And I remember I did a video on rarity and scarcity, talking about like how trophy cards are inherently rare, they're very limited, where set cards, there are more copies out there, so they're based more on scarcity and availability. They still are limited products at the end of the day, but they're much more, available. So when we look at something like Hidden Fates, Charizard, 1,500 copies right now total graded in less than a year. That's a lot, right? But what that really tells you is the demand. That means there's probably at least 1,500 people interested in that card. That's why there are so many graded so quickly. Look at other things like CD promos. I remember this was a topic on E4 the other day. Over 5,000 graded. Why? Because at least 5,000 people want to buy that card. And it's a very liquid card, one of the most liquid cards in the hobby. In fact, I'd put that like god tier popularity, up there with like Shining Mew, base set Charizard, cards that will just always sell. Ancient Mew, they'll just always sell because they're just god tier popularity. So the pop report at the end of the day really represents popularity, population, popularity, similar words. It's right there. It's been there the whole time right in front of us. QX Files theme. That's what the pop report really reflects. It truly reflects the popularity of the cards. And so, if you think this is only true for Modern, that you have these higher pops of these cards, go look at Vintage. Go look at base set Charizard, Unlimited. 12,500 copies submitted. Because there's at least that many people interested in that card. It's no surprise. It's like the most popular card in the hobby. So therefore, the point being is that popularity is what drives set cards, first and foremost. Even something like Unlimited Charizard, its pop completely dwarfs all of these Modern cards. You can even combine them. Do a little DBZ fusion dance with Mega Full Art, Shiny Charizard. You can fuse them all together. It's still less than the base Unlimited Charizard. Because again, it's driven by popularity. So therefore, when people are talking about the reprint, they go through the doomsday cycle. Oh, it's all going to drop. It's all going to go down. I do think that'll probably happen in the short term. I've talked about this in Patreon. I'll probably elaborate more when I do my monthly market recap on everything. But in short, yeah, the short term will probably have some retrace. Sure. Just like we experienced with Evolutions. I remember with Evolutions, Mega Full Art Charizard was booming at like, what, $300 PSA 10? And then it came down, went under $100. Go ahead and look up the price today and see what it's talking about. It went up. You know, it hit that bottom floor. It hit that inflection point where it started to change. You know, the cost of everything, the value of everything started to change. The availability started to change. Therefore, the price had an uptick. So, and Mega Full Art Charizard is something, if you go look at that pop, what is it, like 3,000 PSA 10 examples, like double the shiny Charizard from Hidden Fates. So therefore, you have something that's even more, you know, even more quantity on the market, or even more graded. And still, it had that same pattern of short-term dip and then, you know, long-term growth. That's really what you're looking at with Modern if you're trying to hold. You really have to hold a long, long time. You have to be very patient. And in those first few years, it might not be worth it. Like with Evolutions, you could have held the Evolutions box since the jump in 2016, and it really didn't move. You know, it didn't do much. You weren't taking a loss, but it just didn't do anything. You might as well just have that cash just sitting there, you know, even in like well, right now, high yield savings are just abysmal, like at 1%. But even in something that's extremely boring, is still going to, even 1% is going to give you more than what those Evolutions boxes did. But the bottom line is these sets are based on popularity. That's it. Now, when we're looking at Hidden Fates specifically, one other thing to remember is they don't have booster boxes. I don't have, like, I have Burning Shadows boxes lying around in my office. I have Steam Siege boxes they're just lying around in my office. You know, I don't have that for Hidden Fates. Hidden Fates had a different distribution. So when you're talking tins, you have to remember 4 packs in a tin. Do the math. You have to get like 9 tins for 1 box. It does have a different distribution. It is a little bit more cumbersome. I think another variable to throw in there is that it's more difficult to complete a Hidden Fates set because of that release. You know, I can't go get those boxes. It's much easier for me to get a couple cases, crack those boxes, complete a set. This is a massive set with a ton, if not the most, like, chase cards. You know, it's just an unbelievable amount of chase cards in there. Not to mention, like, the half art shinings. It's got a lot of chase cards to pull, you know, if you're trying to complete a set. I mean, it would take just an astonishing amount of product. So keep that in mind, is that this does have a unique release. Not only is it collector based, it's not based on playability, it's based on collectability, but it also has this unique release where you have to open up all these tins, ETBs, whatever it is. You don't have that nice, convenient 36-pack style, you know, to really tear through product. So I think that's why you see more of a volatility. That's why I think people have more of a speculative vibe or feeling when they're looking at Hidden Fates, because the product inherently isn't as concise as Booster Box. You know, the design itself, having this release where it's tins and, you know, smaller things and not that one box, I think that does create a more volatile pricing situation. Because again, you can't stock up on it, even just from a physical perspective. Like trying to get, again, nine of these tins equals 1 of these boxes, you know, when you're talking pack ratio. So even from that logistics perspective, it's extremely cumbersome. So therefore, you got to throw that in there too, because it's definitely a relevant variable. It's similar like Generations and things like that, where you had to buy a lot of these boxes if you really wanted to complete the set now, and especially with Hidden Fates, because there's just so many friggin' chase cards. So again, I think prices can retrace. There might be some fear flipping happening. You know, sure, that'll probably happen, but, you know, long term, I think Hidden Fates is a great set. One thing to close with, you know, tying in this idea of popularity and how it drives sets, you got to remember that things like Evolutions, Shining Legends, Hidden Fates, these sets were so popular that they brought people back into the hobby. Just like with Base Set. Like, Base Set was so immensely popular. There's nothing that compares to Base Set's popularity. These are just like vestiges of that Base Set popularity. It's like a little like preview of what it used to be. Like Evolutions was like time traveling a bit when that was released, because you had so much, like, just everything, like fanfare, excitement, everything was happening with Evolutions. Everybody was excited about it. Pokemon redesigned their site. I know so many people who rejoined because of Evolutions. Shining Legends is another one. There's people on E4, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember, you know, you came back because of Shining Legends, you came back because of Evolutions. Some people came in because of Hidden Fates. You got to remember they also have these like extra bonus points. Hidden Fates is one of those sets where, like, Crimson Invasion, no one's coming into the hobby because of Crimson Invasion. No one's coming into the hobby because of Fates Collide. You know, those sets don't do that, but these do. You know, they have that like S-tier popularity, so therefore I think there's always going to be a demand for them, which again, that's why the pop report reflects that. That's why you have thousands of Charizards graded from Modern and not thousands of like Guzzlords from Crimson Invasion, because it just doesn't have that same demand. At the end of the day, the pop report really is all about demand. That's what it reflects. So that's what these are going to do. short-term retrace potentially, but you know, it's just a very, very popular set. I don't have a huge position on them. They're just something that's exciting. You know, for me, I'd rather put together a Hidden Fate set, Evolutions, Shining Legends than Crimson Invasion. So I think most people are in that same boat. So yeah, that's what I have for the Hidden Fates reprint. I'm not sure if it'll be the last one. I wouldn't be surprised if there'd be another, but again, it's just tins. It looks a little bit more expansive. And as I mentioned, why it doesn't matter in the long run is because these sets are so immensely popular. I'm not sure how much product you need to satisfy the demand. Evolutions has more product than any of these sets, and people are still buying it. That Mega Full Art Charizard is still selling, if not recently increased as well. So there's your data. As usual, hopefully this was useful, entertaining. You know the deal. Let me know how you feel. That's pretty much it, guys. Till next time.